and it's official. The Leopard is going hunting on the killing fields of Ukraine. Joining it are a handful of British Challengers and soon nearly 3 dozen American Abrams, with more likely to come shortly after.
Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Ryan. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando from the United Kingdom, and that date is wrong. I've just noticed it. But today we're going to be reacting to how Russia plans to destroy NATO tanks. We spoke about this yesterday. We are doing a lot of infographic stuff at the moment, guys. I think it's one of the best places to get information on certain topics, and they seem to be getting Ukraine pretty right, I would say. Not all right, but pretty right. If you want to watch the original video, link is in the description. I'm just reacting to it, guys, okay? You'd be shocked at how many comments I get below saying, can you stop pausing the video? Guess what, guys? I'm reacting to it. This is what I do. That's why I've got nearly 300,000 subscribers on my channel, because I react to content. So let's just get straight into it, shall we? Let's go, troops.
After months of pressure and moving the goalposts, Germany has finally caved, and it's official. The Leopard is going hunting on the killing fields of Ukraine. Joining it are a handful of British Challengers and soon nearly 3 dozen American Abrams, with more likely to come shortly after.
3,000? That's news to me. The last I heard was about 14 of these things. But 3,000? That's definitely more than I originally thought. That's crazy.
The war in Ukraine is heating up as Russia faces the very real possibility of losing against its much smaller neighbor. So how is the Russian Federation going to avoid catastrophic defeat and beat Western tanks? The 3 tanks being sent, the Leopard 2, Challenger 2, and Abrams, are 3 of the best tanks in the world, widely.
Right, do you agree with that? Are they the Leopard, the Challenger, and the Abrams, are they the best in the world? It's certainly what the best countries militarily are using, so can't really argue with that, can you guys?
Considered, in fact, to be the best 3 tanks in existence. Each tank has its own strength, but all 3 are formidable challenges to Russia's aging tank forces. The Leopard takes a more middle-of-the-path approach, providing both excellent mobility, protection, and firepower. It's widely seen as the best tank in the West overall right now because of its ease of use and low-cost operation, maintenance, and widespread availability of replacements and replacement parts. In a grinding war of attrition, the Leopard is going to hang around, while the other Western models might face a significant challenge with resupply and replenishment. The Leopard...
Yeah, resupply, replenishment, it's one of the major factors that you've got to get right, especially with this way that we're fighting the war in the Ukraine. And I say we, it's a massive worldwide effort, isn't it? You've got a lot of NATO alliance countries helping out with the effort in Ukraine. So what I will say is this: it's okay having the technology, it's okay having the kit and equipment, but if you haven't got the ability to maintain that and keep it pristine and in shape, and obviously maintain it in a battle space as well, on the battlefield it's a different game completely, then if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to sustain the war. So it doesn't matter what you've got, it's how you use it, how you maintain it that counts, if that makes any sense.
Leopard is sort of the West's answer to the Soviet Union's philosophy of building a good but not excellent tank in huge numbers. Only the Leopard is built to Western standards and far outstrips any Russian counterpart in capability. The Challenger 2 is a British-built main battle tank which has never seen a loss in combat to enemy action. When building their own tank, the British decided the best way to win...
It took me a few seconds to appreciate that. It's never seen a loss in battle. No, that can't be right. Hang on, let me listen to that again. Sorry, guys.
The British decided the best way to win a tank battle was just to out-survive everyone else. What it might lack in other areas, and it lacks very little, the Challenger makes up for in defense. During character creation, the British put all the Challenger's extra points into armor class, because the Challenger's top-secret Chobham, or now Dorchester armor, is unrivaled anywhere in the world. While many Leopards have been lost in combat operations, not a single Challenger was ever destroyed by enemy action. It even
Whoa, that is so impressive. I like statistics like that, you know, and plus it's a British thing as well. I'm pretty proud of that statistic. It seems to me as if since condensing our military down, British military, we've had to really think about defense more instead of offensive. You know, gone are the days where we could just sling manpower and infrastructure in a battlefield. It's just, we haven't got the numbers anymore. So I do think that they're putting a lot more onus on the defensive capabilities, which does make sense when you are effectively a smaller fighting force, guys.
Outmuscles the American Abrams in weight by around 2 tons, with its full armor packages installed. Next up in Russia's list of impending headaches is the U.S. Abrams. The tank has a reputation for being as lethal as it is difficult to keep operational. The Abrams shares a lot with the British Challenger in terms of armor. Given that the British and the Americans share the technical challenge of developing new tank armor, Its most famous feature might be the inclusion of depleted uranium in both offense and defense. DU armor plating gives the Abrams significant protection at a cost. Many American tankers and even some infantry blame the U.S. government's use of depleted uranium munitions and armor plating for the mysterious Gulf War syndrome that occurred after Desert Storm.
Wow.
Desert Storm is where the Abrams earned its legendary fame, though, with, like the Challenger, not a single tank lost to enemy action. This should be of special concern to Russian tankers because
It's unbelievable, guys. I'm loving these statistics.
the Abrams went up against many of the same tanks Russia is using today and absolutely chewed them to pieces. But America was hesitant to provide Ukraine the Abrams for one very specific reason. It's an absolute bastard about maintenance. Like
It's something else when an American says the word bastard. It's just something, I can really appreciate that. It's an absolute bastard to maintain.
much American technology, it's extremely capable to the point of science fiction, and also a logistics and maintenance nightmare. Instead of a diesel engine, the US installed a gas turbine engine with a monstrous
Gas turbine engine? Wait a second. I've never heard of that ever in my life before. A gas turbine engine?
output of 1,500 horsepower. That's well and great given that the latest model Abrams is now so heavy that it can't cross most road bridges, but the engine also requires intense maintenance from specially trained personnel. Ukraine has proven that a farmer with a good knowledge of diesel engines and access to a machine shop
Can fix a Leopard. I'm guessing is what he's going to say.
can get a Russian tank back in service on
Maybe he's not.
the side of the good guys. But that's not gonna fly with the Abrams, because the Americans wanted to be snowflakes. They ditched diesel in favor of what's basically a jet engine. This means that in case of a large-scale war, American tanks couldn't even share fuel with their European counterparts, let alone replacement parts. Not exactly a great strategy in a high-attrition conflict. So how's Russia gonna win against Western tanks? Well, Russia's proven to be far from a military strategy genius, but they at least aren't sharing their most confidential strategies with the world. However, we can glean some insights from their past and current behavior as well as common sense. For weeks, Russia's been using largely unsupported infantry assaults across the Eastern Front. Operating a Russian tank anywhere near a Ukrainian position has become a very high-risk activity thanks to the proliferation of Western anti-tank missiles. But many Western observers believe that Russia is consolidating its armored forces and training new batches of tank crews to launch a massive offensive in the next few weeks.
You see, the problem I have with that statement alone is you can't just train tank personnel, armored personnel, mechanized infanteers, all of that good stuff in a few weeks. You can't consolidate these numbers down and be able to get the end product working as effectively and as efficiently as, for instance, England, France, Germany, the United States' armored tank personnel crews. These guys are, I'm to no joke, guys, pretty well trained, okay? Go through some of the most rigorous training on the planet. Technically speaking, it's not easy either. You've got to understand the mechanics, the electronics, lots of different things going on with these crews. So you can't just consolidate and expect to launch a large-scale attack overnight within a couple of weeks. That doesn't make any sense. So just like most of Russia's tactical awareness and tactical speaking, operationally, I don't think that's going to happen. Consolidating their troops, I just think it's another excuse for them not actually having the troops, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
By that time, a number of Leopards should be in the country, and it's almost certain that Russia will try to concentrate its armor wherever Western tanks are being used. Right now, about 100 Western tanks have been promised, and Ukraine will likely have about 70 or so of these by late spring. That's entirely too few to conduct large-scope operations with, and Ukraine will be best served by concentrating these numbers into select areas on the battlefield. Russia will likely respond in kind, putting as much firepower as possible directly opposite Ukrainian Leopards and Challenger tanks. One-on-one, if both sides have equally trained crews, Russian T-72s, T-80s, and T-90s don't stand a chance against the Leopard 2. Most analysts believe that the Leopard will be able to shrug off one or two hits in the same vicinity, especially from the front. Meanwhile, the Leopard's cannon, combined with far superior sensors and fire control computer, will be able to bring the hurt from outside the effective firing ranges of most Russian tanks. Defeating Western tanks will become a numbers game, with Russia flooding the battlefield with its own inferior tanks so it can overwhelm Leopards and Challengers. This strategy is similar to that used in World War II against the Germans by the West, and while it resulted in terrible losses for Western armor, it did work. We can expect similar results in Ukraine due to one simple fact. Ukraine will not be able to use these Western tanks the same way that the West would, and whatever tanks the West sends to Ukraine are going to suffer for it. What do we mean by this? Well, in the West, tanks are meant to operate as parts of combined arms operations, with the support of aerial platforms and precision artillery.
Yeah, this is the thing. Whenever I was working alongside tanks, we were always using those tanks with the provision of having other assets available. So, for instance, it was never just a company of Marines storming a position. We might have a tank to the left flank. We might have artillery to the right flank. We might have mortars in the rear, getting the bombs fired over our heads. Okay, we'd have UAVs in the air. We'd have loads of different elements to that battle space, which all complemented each other. So it meant we didn't need to put as many tanks in one area because we had artillery to the flank. We didn't have to put that many infanteers in one consolidated area because we had the enemy thinking about other positions where we were firing from, okay, because we were using multiple assets. So it does work better having multiple assets to your disposal. Easier said than done. Obviously, Ukraine's in a war at this moment in time, didn't realize they were going to get invaded. I get that, okay, but you can't just send tanks over and expect the tanks to work. What are you going to do for the anti-tank crews? What are you going to do with the helicopters and all of the rest of the stuff that really do make a big difference, guys, okay? I agree with that statement there, very, very much so.
This is how the US and its partners defeated Iraq in the first Gulf War, and how the US did it again 10 years later, despite facing a nearly 10-to-1 disadvantage in numbers. The problem for Ukraine is that it cannot match the capabilities of the US and its allies, and it'll be forced to use tanks with far less support than they normally would have. This is the crux of the problem, because as formidable as Western tanks are, and they truly are, there's only so much armor one can put on a vehicle, and it can't be armored equally from all sides. Western armor beats the pants off of Russian armor, but physics is still king and one can only push material science so far. Leopards, Abrams, and Challenger tanks will face significant losses in Ukraine, even if operated perfectly by their crews. Though the Russians will pay a heavy price for every destroyer.
Don't know about that. I don't think they'll be paying a heavy price. The British and the Challengers and the Abrams, I don't think they'll be decimated in the way that's been explained here. There'll be losses, granted, but the technology is far superior, guys, okay? These things are state-of-the-art, and Britain and America wouldn't be using them if they weren't. Yes, expect losses. I mean, tanks are firing bloody massive projectiles at the end of them. If you get hit, doesn't matter what armor you've got on them, to a degree, you're going to get ruined, so to speak. But these things are far superior than what they're fighting against. So it is a numbers game, but give me one of these challenges over 10 of the Russian tanks any day, okay? These things are pretty good bits of kit, okay? Let's not mistake that.
Western tank. That's why Russia's best strategy for defeating Western tanks is to prevent them from being supplied at all. It lost the first round of this battle, but it hasn't lost the war. Germany has little appetite for continuing to send heavy combat equipment to Ukraine, and in fact, its own army is in pretty dire straits. Other countries are more willing, but the fact of the matter is that the promised 100 tanks for Ukraine are in no way enough. The West needs to commit to the continuous resupply of tanks to Ukraine for the duration of the war to have a real impact, and this is a very dicey proposition. Ukraine fatigue has begun to set in, as well as fears of escalation. Russian disinformation and bluffs have done a great job of either getting Westerners to question support for Ukraine or to be so afraid of, quote, escalation that they refuse to support sending heavy combat equipment. Conspiracy theories about Democrats in the US using the Ukraine war to launder money target the gullible and willing to widen the political divide in the US.
Yeah, the political divide is getting greater. I've heard this one before. I haven't looked into it too deep about the whole money laundering aspect of war. Does that happen in most wars? Yes, okay. That's a way for rich people who's in the arms business to profit from war. That's how it works, guys, okay? There's an interesting video out with Russell Brand of recent. Go do some research. He explains a little bit about that. I'm not that bright to be able to explain it effectively myself, so I won't even try, guys. But yeah, lobbying money at war. Is this something new? I'll leave that down to you to decide in the chat, troops.
While in Germany, Russia beats a never-ending drum of escalation rhetoric to fan fears of a wider conflict. Russia is incapable of widening this conflict, and if it picks a fight with a NATO country, it's basically guaranteeing its own suicide. Using nuclear weapons would have a similar result. And there's always the fact that the West also has its own nukes, and they're probably in better working condition. The truth is, there is no escalation. This is merely rhetoric Putin's intelligence agencies have employed to make Westerners afraid. And it's working, given the massive delays in providing decisive aid to Ukraine. So the best way to beat Western tanks turns out to not be on the battlefield, but on the airwaves. Now go check out why Putin is scared of the West.
Fantastic video, as always. I have to say this, guys, Infographics is generally probably my favorite channel on YouTube at this moment in time. I think it's the greatest YouTube channel. I just keep on going back to the content. I keep on relating to it. It's really easy to digest, and you know, I just like it. Whether I agree with some of the content or not, guys. But stick around. Don't go anywhere. I've got something that I want to explain. I can't mention in this video yet. The date is, what's the date today? 7th of March, 2023. So I expect in a few days to be able to mention to you guys that I have signed with a fight promotion, okay, which is what I've been wanting for a long, long time. I can't mention who yet. I can't mention anything more than that. But I am signed, and I will be fighting pretty soon, okay? So the goal has been met. So drop a comment for the algorithm with regards to that. I'm looking forward to troops. I'll see you later.